on this computer. Okay, here we go. Amber Sealey, welcome to Midnight Double Feature. We're absolutely honored to have you, and congratulations on No Man of God. The
Thank
movie
you.
absolutely blew me away. Astounding. I mean, look, I hate to brag this early in the podcast. I just finished a master's in criminology, so this is, I've been, for the longest time, a massive true crime. I guess I don't want to say aficionado because that makes me sound like a douche. But I mean, this absolutely blew me away. And before we do kind of get into the movie, I wanted to talk about you. Spend a few minutes talking about you. I think it takes someone with a passion for criminal justice and observing the issues in the criminal justice system to be able to pull off a movie like this, and someone with a fascination of criminal justice. So, I mean, what drove you to want to tell this story? I mean, that was my kind of opening question because I was like, there's a lot of passion behind this, and I mean, as I'm just sitting there watching it, and even if I knew that I wasn't interviewing you, I would still say, there's a lot of passion behind this, and I'm curious to see where that comes from.
That's so funny. Well, thank you. And first of all, really happy to be here. I love doing podcasts where you get to really string everything out and talk about details and stuff. Um, when you said a passion for criminal justice, I mean, I don't know that I have that. I think I more have a passion for the truth, and a passion for just discovering like what is really going on between these people. Like, what is he really trying to say? What is he really trying to say? And what is the connection that's happening between the two of them? So that was definitely what I was always after, especially because Bundy and Bill are both real people, and those conversations really did exist. And we could go back to the recordings and listen, and I mean, there would be times when we'd read the script and we'd think, that's really weird, did he really say that? And then you'd go listen to the recording and it's like, oh yep, that was really in the recording, that really happened. So for me, it was about that. It was about capturing the truth of the moment and the truth of who they were as people, rather than it was like, oh, I'm a specialist in criminal justice, and so I want to, the authenticity of that stuff was really important to me. I mean, certainly, in terms of the production design and in terms of what they could and couldn't say and couldn't do, all the stuff surrounding the gum, I was really like, well, what really happened there? What was the legality of all of that? What was the thing that they, that the warden didn't like? Was it the wrappers? Was it the gum? You could use the gum to stick up a lock or something like that. What the room really looked like, who would have been there, who wouldn't have been there, how long they were allowed to be in there. Bundy, for example, in photos, I saw him wearing a necklace, a belt, shoelaces. So I was really like, he was allowed shoelaces. So I would go back to the real Bill Hagmeyer or the real Paul Decker, who became the either warden or assistant warden of the prison. I can't remember, but I would ask them, and they would tell me what was and wasn't true. And so I was definitely a stickler for truth, I guess I would say, rather than like feeling like, oh, I know a lot about criminal justice, and I
Right.
want you probably know more about criminal
Rather
justice.
than being a
I do.
crusader. Yeah, no, absolutely. That's
Yeah.
awesome. That's so great. And like this isn't a question that I kind of had written down, but I mean, not only are you wanting to, I guess, portray Bundy and Hagmeyer as obviously authentically, but also being a period piece. I mean, everything has to be period specific. So I mean, I imagine that must have been pretty tough as well.
Well, it was important. I mean, I think it's maybe not as tough as say, 1800s period piece, or, the further you go back, I think the harder it is to find, the objects that you need. I think the 80s is just far enough away that we still have all the contraptions, the microphones and the briefcases and things that were of the time period. However, a lot of them are also like very worn down and look very old, and you can tell they're old. So the problem is always finding items that are authentic to the time period, but also don't look like they're 50 years old, but we had amazing props people and production design. And so we got all that, but that stuff is really important to me. Like I've done 2 movies now that were set in the 80s. And for both of them, I said to, my costume designers, I was like, we cannot have those t-shirts that are made to look like they're 80s now. They need to be the actual authentic 80s, because I can see in the stitching and the seams, if that stuff is not authentic. So, and they were totally on board with that. So we yeah, it just is. It's, I don't know why. I feel like if you're doing a period piece, it's got to be authentic. I mean, maybe I'll do something that's a different, dream world kind of wet place, and it won't matter so much. But for me, so far in the period films that I've done, it was really important to me that every single thing be authentic. I would ask about the furniture and the chairs. Was that chair made before 1983?
That's gonna be fun. I mean, I love seeing like set photos of period piece films where it's just, everything in front of the camera is period, and then you just see just around it like technology. It's
Yeah,
just I love it.
yeah,
Um,
yeah. Like you've got Little House on the Prairie, wood
right,
cabin, and then you have
right.
yeah.
I'm curious because there was a point a couple of years ago when the film industry and TV streaming, what have you, it was so laser focused on Ted Bundy in particular,
Mm.
and he was a part of the conversation, so heavily. And I'm certainly not going to ask you why did you choose Ted Bundy, but I mean, I'm more curious as to what element of this story attracted you more, telling Bundy's story or telling Bill Hagmeyer's story, because I kind of have a theory or a hunch rather that it's the latter.
Yeah, you're not wrong. And I think that's a really good question. And I actually really like the dialogue around that. I do think we should be asking, why do we have so many Ted Bundy movies? And why are we so obsessed with him? And why are we so obsessed with serial killers? And I
That's
certainly
my
was
next
trying to
question.
make this, yeah, I certainly was trying to make this more of a Bill Hagmeyer movie. I mean, certainly it's, they're in the room there, they're, fencing or sword fighting, equally. But I was more interested in Bill than I was in Ted. Maybe because we've had so much Ted before. Um, there's so many different steps to how to answer that question. What drew you in, or why did you want to direct this? The first thing is that the production company, Spectre Vision and Company X, they had the script before I was on board. So they had made the ultimate decision, that they wanted to make this project. And then I got sent the script, and it was for me to consider, do you want to get involved in this? And, I definitely, when I first heard about it, my manager sent me the script. My first thought was like, another Ted Bundy movie? Like, no, we don't need another one. And then I read the script, and it was such a great read. And I found that like it spoke to me, and I did have a take, and I was suddenly like, well, wait a minute, I do have something to say. And actually, I really like Spectre Vision and Company X, and I really like Elijah and Lisa and Daniel and Kim, the producers, and I really want to work with them. And I pitched my version that was very much a kind of left of center version of the film, and they went for it. And so then I thought, well, that's even more exciting. If they like my sort of weird take on this, Bundy film or Bill film, if they like that, then that's even cooler, And I felt a real just connection to them as artists, and I felt like they are the kind of producers who are
They
willing to
supported you.
take risks. And yeah, they were really like, we support your vision of the film, like all the way through. I felt that. And I felt like I want those are the kinds of people I want to work with, is people who are true artists, as well. Obviously it's a business and we need to make money, but also, people who are willing to push the envelope a little bit, which they are. So to me, it just kind of made sense to come on. And then, when I started doing research, I was like, again, like, yeah, there are a lot of Ted Bundy movies, but I felt like what I wanted to ask the question of was, in a sense, why are there so many Ted Bundy movies? And I felt like I was able to make a Ted Bundy movie while also asking that question of, should we be making a Ted Bundy movie? So that's what I did with all the women in the film who are representational of the victims, or just women in general, in a very broad sense, who are looking at Bill, looking at Ted, and then eventually turn to look at us as if to ask, why are you still here? Why are you still asking that question? Because to me, I think we can both have an interest in true crime and people like Ted Bundy, and recognize that it might not be the best thing that we do have that. And to look at, well, why do we have, I think it's not, those two things are not mutually exclusive. They can exist at the same time. We can be doing something for entertainment or shock value, and at the same time we can question it and question, should we be doing it? And, so for me, I felt very much like, well, I'm split here. I'm torn. Like, there's a movie I want to make. I want to do this. And at the same time, I want to question, why is it that I want to do it? And so I felt like I tried to put those two halves together into the film.
I'm so glad you said that, because what I really enjoyed about No Man of God is that it didn't put Bundy up on a pedestal or mythologize him like, so many other documentaries or films do. And while the movie does point out that he was absolutely idolized by people, he's receiving fan mail, things like that. It really, really reminded us that he was in fact an evil person, right? And we never
Mhm.
really forget that there were 30 plus victims that we know of. I mean,
Probably there
that's
were upwards of 100 in reality.
exactly. And their families, right? I mean, you multiply that
Mhm.
by 3 or 4, and you've got a small country. So,
Yeah.
two-part question. It must have been important for you to stray away from mythologizing him. And focusing more on Bill. We leave the prison and and stick with Bill rather than focusing on Ted and going back to his cell, right? I mean, those are I'm sure those are absolutely purposeful choices. So, I mean, it must have been important for you to stray away from mythologizing him, but also if you could just double down on your thoughts about society's fascination with true crime these days, because I mean, here in the podcast game, true crime, the true crime category is, eh, you know, massive,
Booming.
huge.
It's a booming. Yeah.
Right, exactly. I mean, you had Serial, which kicked it off a few years ago. Obviously that was
Yeah.
an iconic podcast, but then now, you've got Netflix coming out every other week with, I mean, limited
Yeah.
series, Sons of Sam, what have you, The Night Stalker. I mean, it's such a weird fascination of the morbid. And what are your thoughts on that? I mean,
Yeah. I think it's a really good point. I mean, how do I say this? It's again one of those things that I think both the yin and the yang can exist at the same time. I think that, well, I like to think that there is an element of being interested in true crime, that is connected to the feeling that you have when you're driving on the freeway and you see a car accident and you turn to look. I think that we're turning to look because we're thinking, oh God, that poor person, I hope they're okay. What's happened to that? I think it's a really human, a pure good thing that we're not looking at them and going, I hope I see lots of gore. I
right,
hope they're
we
I hope those people are
sympathize.
dead. We're
Yeah.
looking, yes, exactly. It comes from a place of sympathy and like oh gosh, I hope they're okay. Now, yes, we're also kind of curious to see the gore. I think it's, but I think it's part of our own innate like will to live ourselves. It's kind of connected to kind of the life force that we all have of like most of us want to keep living and want, and it's quite intense when we see another human being in pain or bleeding, or it's it invokes a kind of a worry, a concern, and to me that's inherently comes from a good place. It comes from concern for other people, right? And I think that the interest in true crime does come from that. And then there's also the piece of it that's like, well, this could happen to me. This could, these are real things. It's not like the metaphysical stuff that may or may not happen. It's like the real, yeah, crimes do happen. We all know somebody who has been a victim of a crime, most likely, um, and then there's the other side of it that does get into the salaciousness and the, like you said, mythologizing of these criminals and serial killers. And that's where I think we get into dangerous territory. And in fact, I just was talking about this with the real Bill Hagmaier the other day. I was asking him some questions for press, and
Just
the press
casually.
wanted me to ask them. Well, I was kind of helping him, and he was telling us, and we asked sort of this question, like we'd asked him, what do you think about these films? And he said, on the one hand, they're entertainment and it's fine. And then on the other hand, he said, there is 5 to 10% of the population that are watching these movies for research. In the same way that Ted Bundy was looking at the detective magazines, the women being choked and strangled, and doing that for research, and sort of stoking his own weird personal fire.
5 to 10%.
You
He
know,
said that was the
that was
number he
what he
threw out.
said.
Wow.
That was the number that he threw out. Yeah. and
Wow.
and so I thought, well, what is that obligation that we have if 90% of the people are looking at it coming from a sort of not a, let's call it, not a not bad place, just looking for entertainment or looking for curiosity, or even looking for like a place of sympathy, like you said. And if 10% are looking coming at it from like I want to see that person's head cut off, or, titillation or research for crimes that they want to commit, that's certainly very scary. And honestly, I don't have an answer. I don't know what our responsibility is. I am as guilty as the next person who, I made a movie that is about a serial killer. Like I said, I argue that it's more a Bill movie. It's a more movie about us than it is about Bundy. But Bundy is there. He's a huge part of it. Portraying him as accurately as I could was really important to me. And so when people point the finger at me and say, well, you made another Bundy movie, my response to that is, you are not wrong. And I am totally happy to talk about it. And, and it is slightly hypocritical of me. I guess that myself and the producers had hoped in some maybe naive way that this film would be the period at the end of the sentence, that this could be the last Bundy film. I'm not so naive that I really believe that's true. I'm sure there will be more, but that was at least the thing that kind of kept me going when I was making it. Was like, all right, I also felt like, as an outsider to the true crime genre, that I was, I was saying, I feel like something new and something different, and people might disagree with that, but I felt like, I was portraying Bundy as I see him, and I was making a nod to the victims and a nod to us as the audience and our kind of obsession with people like Bundy, and trying to incorporate that into the film. And that felt important to me. So,
No, you did.
Yeah.
You did a great job, I think. Even like it's brilliant, and I'm gonna hone in on it, just with some specific aspects of it. So, I mean, if to listeners who are listening, if you haven't seen it, go check it out. But I mean, there might be some indirect spoilers that might follow, so just be very careful, tread carefully, tread lightly.
Pause here, go watch the movie, then come back.
Right, then come back. But make sure you come back. That's the important part. Just before I do though, like something that you said kind of like triggered in my head. I think another really interesting factor that might be at play here is with all these documentaries and movies and TV shows, what have you, it's so easy to watch a horror film like Friday the 13th, or something that's just pure escapist horror that follows a monstrous serial killer, and it's so easy to press the back button and switch to a documentary about a real life serial killer and like not changed your mindset as you're watching it, like
switching.
right. So I think it's so much easier for that lack of, I guess, realization to kick in, if that makes sense, these days, than anything. That's just my 2 cents, but yeah, thought that was really
it's complicated. It's because the other thing is, we like big emotion. Like, as human, we love love, we love joy, we love fear. Like, it's exciting to us to feel those big feelings, and that's a large part of what cinema does. It's entertainment, and it makes us feel those big feelings that make us, in a sense, feel really alive, and so that's what the Friday the 13th, or the Halloween, what all of those things, like, we get a kind of collective, like, oh, don't open that door, so there's something also just quite sweet about that, and quite it's just really about entertainment, like, and
Right.
we want to be entertained, and I don't think there's anything wrong with that. But you're right, it's the lines can get blurry when you move between a film that's, say, like a comedy horror film, and then you move towards a true crime
Right.
recreation. Where are those lines? I mean, I think there are many lines, and I think that they sometimes are very far apart, and sometimes they're uncomfortably close together, and it's really like a case by case basis, you know.
Absolutely, that's incredibly well put. I love that. I noticed that you usually tend to direct the scripts that you write, so how was this experience different this time around, as you're directing Kit's amazing script?
Yeah, it was great. I mean, I love the script. I'm a big fan, of the writing, and obviously, I mean, most directors, they do a pass. When you're directing something, you get so intimately involved in it, and so you end up, doing some of the writing, credited or uncredited. So that happened here as well, and
Nice.
and that's just a part of it. But to me, it was doesn't matter what I'm directing if the writing is great. It doesn't matter if I wrote it or somebody else wrote it. Like if it's there on the page, it's on the page, and it comes to life in your brain as you read it. So it didn't feel different really from directing something that I had written. I mean, only in that there was more of a larger conversation to be had with the writer and the producers. If there was something that I wanted to change, we would have a conversation. Whereas if something I've written, I would just erase and write, erase and write.
Absolutely.
But yeah, when it comes to, exactly. But when it comes to production, with indie film, at least, the director really does have a voice in terms of the writing. So I didn't feel stifled in that way at all. It was a great process.
It's amazing to hear. I mean, you hear horror stories about so many directors being, I guess, chained, or their voice is lost. But that's so amazing to hear. And I think your voice really came through with this movie. Um, let's we need to talk about the amazing Elijah Wood and Luke Kirby. This is these two absolutely anchor the movie, and if these two don't work, the movie doesn't work. And I'm curious to know what your process was in directing them. Like, how did they develop their characters, and in particular, did you do anything to help foster their relationship as we see it on the screen? Because I mean, when you yell cut, I mean, are they as friendly as you want them to be, or what's going on there?
Well, we were really lucky, I think, with this production. All of our crew and all of our cast, we were all just so, it was the first time our first lockdown in Los Angeles was about 6 months long, I think, where we were told really don't leave your homes, and people were taking that very seriously in the beginning. I wish they were taking it seriously now, but and so for a lot of us, we had not really interacted with people, other people outside of the people that lived in our homes for those months. And so it was a big deal when we got together, and there was actually a lot of love on that set. People were really like happy to be around other people, and happy that our industry seemed to be coming alive again, because it had fully shut down for a while there. And so that, I think, that plus just that we had really good people, and Elijah and Luke are that. They're just wonderful people. They're consummate professionals, and they're so kind and loving and respectful. And so we all had such a great relationship. And in terms of the directing, we rehearsed together over Zoom. So it was like this over Zoom. We got to, rehearse a little bit, not as you normally would, but luckily the blocking wasn't complicated, because it was like, well, you're sitting at a table and you stay sitting at the table, and your chair moves back and then your chair moves forward. So we didn't have to worry too much about, rehearsing the blocking. But to me, what I wanted to rehearse was the, like, well, what does he really mean when he says this? Why does he say that? Oh, okay, he's saying that to impress him, and he's saying this to evade having to answer that question. And so it was more, breaking up the scenes almost as you would a play, really figuring out, what are these beats, why does this change here, why does he get mad here, what, figuring all that out. And so we spent, a number of days doing that together, which was really fun. And then when it came to filming, there are these very long scenes, right? I think our longest was like 22 pages of just dialogue between the two of them. And that's hard, that can be incredibly tiring to do. So I break it up. I break it up in different ways. I basically talk over the, as we're filming, I throw different direction at them. I say, okay, let's go back to that line again. And this time try, I try to make it really playful and fun. And again, it's always about seeking the truth. It's always about trying to find variety, so that in the edit, I have choices and options, and just being open to what can come in the moment. And as we're going, we'll start to get into a moment, and suddenly I'm like, I know I'm not going to use it. Like, this part feels too intimate, or whatever it is. And I'll just feel like, this is too intimate. I know I'm not going to use this in the edit. And so to me, it's like, well, we don't need to waste time continuing recording. Let's pause and go back and do it a different way. So that's my approach for this kind of film. It's always different depending on what film you're on and what the scene is and what are the, elements involved. But with the two of them just sitting at the table, it was really nice and easy to play and have fun and go back and forth and really get to dig into what are the power done? I mean, it's all about power, right?
Yeah,
It's all about
yeah.
power between them.
No, absolutely, and that comes across in spades. Well, I'm curious. As you're kicking off production, do you hold a meeting where with the cast or crew or whoever, kind of getting on the same page, like being like, "Hey, look, this is this is obviously a movie that's focusing on Ted Bundy, but the focus is not to be like the other movies or that came before, but rather kind of show him as the elusive individual that he was right up to the very end. Did you kind of to be able to get on the same page? Did you kind of need to hone in on that and get everybody on the same page together, like at the beginning, or did everyone just know?
Well, sort of. I mean, you have like tone meetings and script meetings, and you have so many meetings, the creative meetings, when you're in the development phase, that by the time you get to production, it's like everybody knows what the deal is. You also, or I make what you call what some people call a creative brief or a lookbook or whatever. And for me, I pack that with information and I give that to all of my heads of department, and I ask them to disseminate it amongst their crew as needed. And in there's I've written so much information about what this movie is, what the tone is,
Wow,
what we're going to focus on, and so that's so that's it almost becomes, it's part of the water that you drink.
that's
Yeah,
awesome.
so everybody's already kind of on the same page. And people ask, I mean, I think when you interview with people and you talk about it, it comes up like, well, what's your take on the film and how do so I usually end up giving a little bit of my spiel, as we interview, like, and this is what's important to me about the script, and this is how I'm going to do it. And so yeah, it comes out sort of slowly and constantly. So there's never a time where we have to sit everyone down and go, okay, just make sure everyone knows, we're not,
Right.
we're going to do it this way. But that's just because that process is baked into every other step of the way,
Right.
of making the film, and of the like I said, the brief that you give everybody, so everyone can reference, and you put color and characters and lighting references, so there's so many different references in that people can refer to see like how you want the movie to be made. It's kind of becomes your Bible.
Yeah, no, that really interested me because I mean, with a movie like this, when you don't have too many characters on screen, if an actor is, I guess, not on the same page as you are, they're going to stick out. I think, like it's very important to maintain consistency, and I think that's such a great idea to be to give department heads the same kind of like manuscript of like what you want. That's a brilliant idea. That's fantastic.
I
um
wish I could take credit for it, but I think it's what everyone does.
well, that's actually the first time I've heard of that. But that's awesome. That's such a great insight. Thank you so much for that, Ava. So look, one element that I really, truly, truly loved were the montages between time periods. That kind of like really gave us a sense of how the world was feeling at that particular time. Um, covered by the amazing music in this movie. Like it's just
Clarice Jensen. Yeah, she's
wow,
our composer. Yeah, she's
wow.
amazing.
Well,
Yeah.
okay. Before I get into the actual montage, like, did you have to give her notes as to what you were looking for? Like, I mean, that was absolutely
So those
amazing.
songs, the songs that are used for the montage, my note to her was, okay, Clarice, pretend you're a band from the 80s and you're going to make like an 80s sort of emo pop song that's like of the period. And then she would send me something and I go,
Perfect.
yeah, great, but make it like a little more dark, a little more creepy and dark, and so we go back and forth. So those are where those songs came from, and I just love those songs because they are, like I said, I want that synthy 80s. It was important to me that we didn't do any like sound alike 80s stuff, like trying to be Pat Benatar or something, because it's like audiences then are just going to be like, well, I want real Pat Benatar. So to me I was like, look, Clarice, you are you're flock of seagulls in the
Yep.
80s. That's
Yep.
you're the whole band. And she was great. She put her voice in there as elements, and we talked a lot about that, the female like the female voice being an instrument and it
Oh,
being a
nice. Yeah.
subliminal thing that
Yep.
people are hearing or not, but that's so she used her voice as a tone a lot. Yeah, but she was just really fun to work with, and yeah, I'd give her, no weird notes like that, and sometimes I say, like, I just want like a tone, a sound, like a heavy kind of screechy sort of sound.
She absolutely knocked it out of the park. I mean, the okay, look, I live in an apartment block, and the bass from
Oh yeah.
those segments was yeah, I kind of had to ride the remote a bit because I
You're
mean,
like, sorry neighbors,
yeah,
sorry.
right, exactly. But I mean, like, no, it was amazing. It sounded incredible, and it really fit what we're seeing on screen. Like, my question is about the montage is, how did you select the kinds of things we saw in those montages? I mean, there's so many different, I guess, little clippings, and random things. I mean, like, for example, you've got that shot over the ocean as the wave rises up. So what was the thought process there as you're selecting these things?
So that was a really long process finding that footage, and I'm really glad to hear what you said earlier about how it was really showing you what life was like outside. Because I was like, we made this conscious choice not to go outside of the prison, but I also felt like I really want to see women like just living their life, walking to work, sitting at
Nice.
work, riding the bus. I just want to see what are these women's lives, again, sort of evoking the victims, evoking all the women whose lives were cut short. Um, and so it felt important to me to show that. And we didn't have the budget to go out and shoot, all of that stuff. So it was, and it also became clear during COVID as well that we couldn't recreate the people outside of the prison on the day that he was
Yep.
being
Yep.
executed.
Yep. Yep.
And so then it was like, I had a few different ideas that were going to happen for those interstitial moments. And then it just became really clear. I was like, well, wait a minute, if we use the existing 80s footage of the people outside the prison, then it makes a lot of sense to just use existing 80s footage of women as well. And then it all, it will, I was very concerned about the aspect ratio changing and going from, using 80s footage to using our modern Alexa footage and how that was going to
Right.
look. And so we played around with it a lot. And we played around with different things you can do in the edit, texture grades to the footage to kind of make it more seamless. And we cropped all the 80s stuff so it wasn't the fourth grade
Nice.
anymore. We made it
Okay.
fit into our aspect ratio. And we played with it in the edit, and it worked. It was lovely. And so, but that 80s footage, I mean, we hunted everywhere. We were looking on Getty Images, we were looking on Pond 5. But additionally, I have my cousin and one of my really good friends who was my next door neighbor when I was a kid. They both filmed a lot in the 80s. They were those kids that had the camcorders all the time.
Right.
And I knew they had tons of tapes. And I asked them, I said, hey, can you send me those? Because I knew they'd have like women just going about life and, doing stuff, and their moms, and so they sent me the tapes and we digitized all of them. And I
Wow.
say I got a name. So Patrick Nelson Barnes, our editor, Patrick Lawrence, who was assistant editor, and Kim Sherman, who was one of our producers, and myself, we all digitized this footage and watched all of it and selected moments. And then Patrick Nelson Barnes, my editor, also, he was the one that found that wave footage. But all of us were spending, it was a very long process, just hours and hours and days hunting down footage, like the rat in the basement. But a
Right.
lot of it came from my friends, my cousin and my friends, Jacob Bronstein and Willie Richardson, came from their
That's
tapes that they
awesome.
had filmed in the 80s. Yeah. The
How
rat
amazing
was
that
like,
they
we knew
still
we
have them.
wanted a rat. So the rat we had to find. I think we got that from Pond 5 or Getty. I can't remember which one, but
Oh, the rat
yeah.
had me squirming in my seat. Like, I was just like, oh man. Yeah, I'm sitting there watching this with my girlfriend, and I'm just like, oh, I'm feeling a little bit uncomfortable right
Yeah.
now.
You're like,
Right.
one time there was a rat or a mouse in my bed. I was asleep
What?
and I felt this little like, yeah, and
No.
I wasn't, not to be too personal, but I was not
Please.
wearing a shirt and I felt a little like what felt like a cold, wet rat nose on my back. And I heard a little, scurrying sound on the sheets. And I like kind of turned to my husband and I was like, honey, I think like a rat or a mouse is in the bed. And he goes, Amber, you have a very active imagination. Like there is no rat. And I was like, you're right. You're right. I do have an active imagination. Like it's not. So I go back to sleep. And then in the morning, I wake up and I go in my bathroom and there are like rat
Oh,
droppings and a puddle of like rat or mouse
oh
poop
my
on the
god.
bathroom floor. And I was like, ah, So
Burn
I
it.
was right, and
Get
I
out of the
will never
house.
trust my
Take your
husband
stuff.
again.
Burn all your stuff
Oh no,
down.
we after that we spent like $5,000 getting all of the house. You can get all your vents sealed, and we got them
Right.
all. So yeah, no more. But that was
That is
anyway. That's my
a
tangent for the day.
no. Please go on as many tangents as you want, because that is a perpetual fear of just being asleep and something coming up because you're
Yeah.
at your most vulnerable. So, yeah, that's
Oh,
terrifying.
it was
Um,
not fun.
Something that similarly stuck out to me about No Man of God, like the montages,
Mm,
was um, the quick close-up shots that you had during the interrogation scenes. So,
mm,
the handcuffs, the tape recorder, the ring, and I love the emphasis of this man is a prisoner, yet he and Bill have something in common. Obviously the family outside of all of this. So I'm curious what those close-up shots, especially on the handcuffs, like just like a quick reminder of like, hey, this guy's still in shackles, like he's not they're not outside having this casual conversation. This is a interrogation. He's here to extract information. What do
mhm.
those close-ups mean to you? Because those really stuck out to me. And you get like you get the clinking of the sound of the handcuffs like really quickly, and I really appreciated
Mhm.
those. So,
Mm.
what was your thinking there?
Well, it's a few things. One of them is just like playing with what is in the room. It's an empty room. There's nothing in there, right? Apart from them. But the chains, I mean, that again, it's so evocative. The sound, the tinkling sound is both scary and beautiful. And it was also, yeah, like you said, it was a reminder of like this guy's in chains. The chains are, I mean, he was in chains the entire time. I do think Bill Hagmeyer told me a few times that he was allowed his handcuffs off, but he always had to keep his ankle chains on. But we made the choice to keep them on all the time in all the scenes for a few reasons. But I just am a fan of the ECU, the extreme close up. Like I'm a fan of it. I love looking at things closely. Like I have this little loop, photographer's loop that I look at things with, and I just like it. I like zeroing in on something. I love looking at the fibers of paper and wood and skin. And
I love
so
macro
it's just a way
photography.
that
Yeah,
yeah, like
yeah.
me too. It's endlessly beautiful. You can look at anything, water, a white wall, just going in, and it cracks appear and things appear that you didn't, microorganisms, and the hair, the image of the hair on the
Oh,
arm standing
yeah.
up, stuff like that. To me, it's just beautiful. It's also like a reminder of how, I don't know, how human we all are and how connected we all are to like our essential being of just being atoms.
Yeah.
So for me, I'm just a fan of going close with the camera, and especially on people. So we didn't end up using all this stuff, but I did shoot a lot of like close-up stuff of their eyes and their mouth, and some of it is in some of the interstitials, and some of it's in some of the scenes. But yeah, I guess my best answer is I just like it.
Yeah, no, I mean, sometimes that's the best answer. I mean, like, honestly, again, I love macro photography. Like, I love
Mhm.
looking at I mean, like, I guess that's why those shots like kind of like really stuck out to me, because they're not used as commonly as they should be. I really enjoyed it. So those really stuck out to me. I loved it. Bit of a fun
And you might
one.
be also
Oh,
sorry
good.
to
Yeah,
interrupt.
no,
You
go
might be
please.
also referencing, most people use cutaways as like someone goes to the phone, quick insert of phone being picked up. We consciously didn't do that. The sort of normal way people edit with that kind of footage, insert shots. Yeah. So to me, it was more about using those, if you want to call them insert shots, using them as emotional beats rather than as like story
Right.
beats for how normally they're used. So maybe that's also why you responded to them more, is because Patrick and I in the edit, it was more about, wow, we either need an emotional breather or we
Right.
need to go much closer emotionally, rather than like, oh, he's scratching his hand, and so we do a close up of the hand at that moment. That's more like a story beat rather than
Mm.
emotional beat.
Yeah, it must. It really got me subconsciously. Like I was like, this is really affecting me. It's affecting me. I really appreciated that. Bit of a fun one here, Amber.
Yeah, I like it. I like it.
Okay, look, I don't usually ask these questions, but I'll never be 2 degrees removed from Elijah Wood again. So I'm gonna take this chance. I
Isn't it
grew
just
up.
1 degree? Aren't I the
Is that
one
is that
degree? I
is that
feel
right?
like. Is
You're
it
the
two? I
one?
don't know.
I don't know, but
I don't know.
everyone knows what I mean, right? um, I grew up with Lord of the Rings. I mean, and I just need to know: did he tell you any stories? Did he tell you any stories about Peter Jackson? Come, like, what can you give me?
Oh man, I feel like I'm going to disappoint you so much with this answer because I
Oh,
did not ask him one thing about it. I did
wow!
not. I've always been a fan of Elijah's myself, but
Yeah,
I'm more starstruck by him with like the Ice Storm. That was more
nice.
I loved Lord of the Rings. I loved
Mm,
them, but I don't think I was like obsessed with them
right.
the way some people can be. And I
He was
haven't
great in
seen
Sin
them since
City.
they, huh?
He was
Oh,
great
in
in
Sin
Sin
City.
City. Yeah,
He's great in everything. He's great in
Chameleon.
everything. But I didn't ask him one question about Lord of the Rings. I should have. I'll ask him now. Let me text him. I mean, I did probably make 1 or 2 jokes about. There was a moment we were zooming in on his eyes, and I was like, my precious, like there was probably a moment when I was like, because you can't help but think, I mean, that shot of him with the ring, right?
Yeah,
Just looking so close with his huge eyes. And I was zooming in on him. So I probably made a joke or two about that, but I'm sure he's used to it. He didn't, I hope he didn't take offense. Um, but yeah, I had forgotten in a sense what a big star he is.
yeah.
Like I sort of, then we started doing press and at Tribeca, there were tons of Lord of the Rings fans there just to see him and say hi to him. And I was like, oh yeah, you were the star of that huge international hit. I
Yeah,
had forgotten.
that
Because to me,
record-breaking
he's just
franchise.
Elijah. Yeah, I,
Right.
I forget what a celeb he is. He's such a just normal guy that I forget. Yeah.
He's absolutely amazing as Bill. And yeah, I don't know the real Bill. But I mean, I can only imagine that um that Elijah just did his best to portray him accurately.
He
So
did
that
a
is,
great, he did
yeah,
a great job. I mean, the real Bill, I do know the real Bill, and he is such a sweet guy, just a really good, sweet, caring, thoughtful person. And I think Elijah really got that. Like he really connected. I mean, Elijah is also a very empathetic, good, listener. He's got that good heart and soul. And I think that that's what Bill also has. And so I think that was a nice overlap that they both had, or that Elijah was able to, or he was able to fake it. But
he's brilliant. Did you
yeah,
ask? Okay, look, if you didn't ask Elijah about Lord of the Rings questions, did you ask
I'm
him?
sorry.
No, that's fine. Did you ask him about the secret to eternal youth? Because he honestly looks like he just stepped off the Lord of the Rings set.
I don't know.
I don't know how he does
Some
it.
people just have
I
good
don't know how he does it.
skin, and
Yeah,
he's one of them. Like
yeah.
he just, I don't think he has any wrinkles.
No.
He just has good skin. Fuck yes. Can I swear on this
Yeah,
part? I was
no,
about
please,
to
please.
swear. I was
Like
gonna
a
say
sailor.
fuck them. No,
Like a
I mean I
sailor.
was just looking at Luke and him, on the monitor all day, going, oh, Jesus fucking Christ. I mean, they're my age, and like I was like, I've got wrinkles. Why don't they have any wrinkles? I don't know. If there is a fountain of youth, they have not shared that information with me, but I'm
Damn it.
gonna get that out of them. Because yeah, Elijah, I think some people just have that bone structure,
Right.
where
That Paul
their
Rudd
eyes,
kind of, yeah.
yeah, and
Yeah.
they don't wrinkle, or maybe it's they drink more. I'm gonna have a sip of water. They drink more water than I do.
Right. I'm definitely gonna go downstairs and fill up my liter bottle after this.
I will ask him what his moisturizer routine
Let's
is.
do
See if that.
it. Amber, what's next for you? I mean, you've got this movie out now. It's on VOD. It's streaming. It's out there in the world. So you've lived with this movie for, I guess, a couple years now. And it's out there. But what's next for you? I mean, are you going to tackle another another
Son of
movie.
Sam is next, and then no, we're gonna
Well,
do all
another.
of the serial killers.
Well, yeah. My question is:
Um,
are you going to stay in the crime genre, or are you going to?
I definitely been getting a lot of crime scripts, a lot of like thriller crime scripts. To me, I am not a genre
Right.
specific director. Like I'm really about, does this speak to me? And do I feel like I can do, like, am I interested in this? Does it, like when you read a script, the vision will come to you or not, and so yeah, I am attached to a couple of things that are comedies. So I will make a comedy very soon. And then I'm also writing a few things. I'm actually writing something that's a comedy for Luke and another friend of mine who's a comedian, which I'm excited about. And my friend and I were joking that we need to get Elijah to come and do a little cameo. He's
Oh
very into,
yes.
he's into he does a podcast as well. His name's Connor Ratliff. He does this great podcast called Dead Eyes. I don't know if you've heard of it, but you
No.
should listen. It's funny. But he
Yeah.
was talking about how he likes films being like A and B sides. So, if No Man of God is the A side, the B side is this other movie that I'm writing. So we need Elijah to come be in it as well. So it makes sense to be the B side to No Man of God. But yeah, it's I'll definitely, I don't want to say that like, oh yeah, this is my genre now and I'm going to do this always, because I do think I'm an outsider to the genre, but I understand it better now. I think I know the world better now. And if a script comes to me that speaks to me, then certainly I'll do it. But I'm not actively seeking out that kind of project. It's more
No,
about like what speaks to me.
that's good to hear. I mean, you don't want to get yourself pigeonholed in one kind of category, and then that's all you get, right? You're just known as that director working in that genre, right? No, absolutely. That's
Yeah.
amazing.
I feel like right now the world needs comedies. So
Oh
I'm like,
yes, in
I'm
spades.
focusing on
Yeah,
that.
in spades, absolutely.
Yeah.
We're nearing the end here, and this is not a part of my questions, but something that came up in my research and that I found really amazing. You're an acting coach. Um, that I mean, what does that entail? I mean, like
Well,
how does that look?
I haven't done it for a couple years now. So I used to be, but it was something that as I was making the transition from being an actor to being a director, that's something that I started doing was coaching. It started out with just friends asking me, hey, can you, I'm working with this actor and it's not going so great. Could you come on set and kind of help me? It was basically a lot of director friends saying to me, I don't really know how to work with this actor. I don't know what to say to them. I don't know how to get them to do what I want them to do, sort of thing. So, and then it just grew from there. And I basically started helping actors that wanted help, and then also helping producers and directors work with, kind of helping the director learn a language for how to work with their actors. You'd be surprised how many directors, they come out of film school and they know a lot about cameras and lighting and the technology side, but they really don't know a lot about how to work with the actors. And to me, that's kind of the most important part of the job. So I just started doing that as sort of a little side hustle, and then my own directing picked up, and so I've had to stop doing that because I don't really have the time for it anymore. But it came out of a love of, I used to be an actor, and it's just something I know really well and I feel really comfortable with. And um, yeah. But
No, that's
I haven't been
awesome.
able to do it for a while.
I mean, that's great. Yeah, I think you definitely hit the nail on the head. Like, a lot of film people come out as film school, that all they know are textbooks and behind the camera and technical things. They just don't know how to talk to people. And I think that's great. That's fantastic that you're bridging that gap. Last question. This is a fun one that I always ask my guests. Where this podcast is called Midnight Double Feature. So you've got a Sunday, you're completely free. What are the two movies you throw on back to back on the spot?
Oh God, that's the worst. I'm so bad at that kind of question. Oh man. Let's think. Well, am I watching alone or with my children?
Let's go. You're watching alone. Let's go. You're
Okay,
watching.
alone.
Yeah,
God, you're gonna have to take out some of this long, boring pause here while I think.
please, just go for
Um,
gold. I'll give you mine.
I mean,
I'll give you mine.
okay,
So
yeah.
mine's always going to be Jaws. as one,
Okay.
and then coming off of that, Terminator 2. I that's just throws way back to my childhood. I love action movies, but
All
yeah.
right. I'm gonna so I love, first of all, I love Roman Holiday.
Oh,
I also love the movie Happy Go Lucky.
okay.
I also love Force Majeure.
Oh,
Um,
nice.
I also love I love The Proposal, the rom-com with
Ryan
Sandra Bullock.
Reynolds.
I love Grease,
Oh,
the
who doesn't?
original Grease. Um, God, I'm just like I should know better. Like, what are my favorite? I know you only asked for two, but I feel like I
No,
can only do
please.
like a whole bunch. I love The Favorite, Yorgos Lanthimos.
Oh, that was a
Um,
great movie. The
I
fisheye
love
lenses and
Ratcatcher, Lynn Ramsey's Ratcatcher.
yep, 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 yep,
I
yep.
love Fish Tank, Andrea Arnold's Fish Tank. Um, what else? What else? What else? Feel like I know that we're gonna hang up and I'm gonna go, oh my God, I didn't say. But those are movies that I love, and just
That
yeah,
sounds
it's like a
like
mixture of dumb, fun,
yeah,
rom-commy stuff, and then sort of
and then
more
serious,
weird
like
art stuff.
yeah,
Yeah.
exactly. No, that sounds like a great Sunday afternoon. Honestly, that's awesome.
See, I think
Um,
what is it, all six of those? I can't just watch two. It has to be all six of them.
look, Amber, thank you so much for joining us. This has been
Thank
amazing. The
you.
movie again is incredible, and I'm so glad to have been a part of it, to be able to talk to you about it. It's amazing. So a huge congratulations again, and I can't wait to see what you do next. Um,
Thanks so much. You're a pleasure to talk to. It was really
thank
fun. I
you.
appreciate you having me on.
Thank you. Look, you have an open invitation anytime to join us. I definitely want to have you back for the next project. So for sure, keep an eye out on your emails because I want you back.
I will. I will. And thanks for, getting up so early in the morning
Oh,
to do this.
please, please, it's another day. Thank you so much,
Uh,
Amber.
all right. Take care.
You too. Bye.
Bye.